Go.
Okay, everybody. I'm going to be talking a bit about David Graeber, and I'm going to make it. This is going to be a little bit less formal than my last talk. My last talk was quite heavy on the introduction. Basically, this one is going to be more focused on us having a discussion about the ideas of David Graeber, in particular his ideas about bullshit jobs, and I want to give a brief, short biog of David Graeber, and then we can move on to I'll briefly summarize debt to the first 5,000 years, and then we move on to a more expansive summary of bullshit jobs, and then we can just open the floor to a general discussion. Right. Okay. So David Graeber is a North American, as in United States. I think he was born in New York. Anthropologist. Now, he was he's from quite a working class background. His father is quite interesting as well. His father went to Spain during the Spanish Civil War back in the 1930s, and where he worked as an ambulance driver with the anarchists there, and so he came back, and he presumably met David Graeber's mother, and they got married, or they lived together. I'm not quite sure which, but it's not really important. Now, they were both. His mother worked in a factory, and she was also quite political. I think she was involved in union organizing, things like this, and so the young David Graeber grew up in this working class Jewish family in New York during the 1960s, and he was obviously very bright, and he went to I think it was Yale he went to, and he was where he studied anthropology, and he became quite a star pupil. He went across to Madagascar. That was where he did his anthropological research as a graduate, and I think possibly postgraduate as well. And his observations, this would be 1980s now, so his observations as to what was happening in Madagascar society in the wake of the whole neoliberal IMF policy at the time, which is basically to cut back the state and so on. So he was able to see how people were reacting to this, how they were coping in one way or another. And when he got back, he was quite inspired, and he was a very avid reader. He read in a wide range of different subjects, for everything from religion to politics, to economics, to philosophy, to a whole wide you could virtually talk with him about anything, and he'd have something to say on it. And he was, but he was quite politically involved from quite a young age, I think. And he went to he got involved first, I think, in the anti-globalization campaign at the end of the 1980s, start of the 1990s, and he went on from that to play quite a prominent role in Occupy. It's claimed, though he claims that it's not quite true, but he certainly had something to do with it. It's claimed that he came up with the phrase "We are the 99%." Now he says he didn't. It was a group decision. He came up with the "we" or something, and somebody else came up with "are," and somebody else came up with "the," and somebody came up with 99%, or maybe he came up with 99% and everybody else added the rest of it. I don't know. But anyway, that was what he, that was a well-known phrase nowadays in the world today, which he had something quite important to do with. Now he went on from that to he was as soon as he was involved in Occupy, he got the Order of the Boot from Yale University. They decided that they didn't want him there because he was too much of a troublemaker, and so he thought, well, you know, I'll take myself somewhere else. So he ended up in the University of London, and I think it was the School of Economics. Yes, and he ended up over there, and then he got involved as well. He never stopped being involved with politics. He was heavily involved in various labor issues. He's involved in a labor issue at the university, which is quite important. That was defending the rights of the cleaners. The cleaners had demanded to be brought back in house because everything had been outsourced. So he asked for them to be brought back in. I mean, they were self-organizing themselves, of course, but he showed 100% solidarity with them. And eventually, after the 10-year campaign, they were actually brought back in house. He's also involved in, if you've heard about Rojava in northern Syria. This is autonomous, predominantly, though not entirely, Kurdish area in northern Syria that was able to get independence during the retreat of the Syrian state in order to deal with the jihadists, and they've been in existence ever since, though a lot of their territories have been occupied by Turkey, which is a hostile power as far as the Kurds are concerned. And the other, but they're still organizing, and they're still using this model which David Graeber approved of, which was grassroots politics from below, influenced by anarchist ideas, and focusing on freedom, and in particular in Rojava's case, in the in being real about the emancipation of a woman, not just making bland statements about it, actually doing stuff about it. So so anyway, that he was heavily involved in that. He's also been involved in Palestine solidarity, lots of different things. He was also involved in the Jeremy Corbyn campaign in the Labour Party, and that might seem to be a bit contradictory. How does an anarchist get involved in the political party? But he didn't see it as a contradiction. And he, as well as being an anthropologist, and as a he was also obviously involved heavily in politics, and he was also involved in he was just a guy who liked to have a lot of fun, and one of the main things he was interested in having fun was carnivals. And he loved carnivals, and he would travel all over the world to go to them and get all the costumes for them and all the rest of it. And he went on this year in September or August, I can't remember which way it was, but anyway, he went over to Venice to get prepared for the Venice Carnival, and it's complete surprise. He just fell over and unconscious, and he was dead within a very short period of time, and nobody knows quite what the problem was. I think it was obviously some sort of underlying condition which he didn't know about, and which his wife didn't know about, and which nobody else seemed to know about either. So and it just took him out like that. So it's been a bit of a big shock, because he's such an interesting person. If you see any of his videos online, I really recommend them. Because he's such an engaging, and he's a really funny person as well. So there's a lot of jokes thrown into what he's talking about, but what he's talking about is really serious, and it's really relevant to where we are in the world today. So as I say, unfortunately, David Graeber is no longer with us, but his books are with us. So we can now move on to The Summary of Debt, which was his first major, like, worldwide bestseller, as it were. And it's called A Summary of Debt for the First 5,000 Years. And what he asks in that, well, he first of all, he explains that nobody has ever come up with nobody has ever done an analysis of debt in our society. They've done an analysis of absolutely everything else you can think of. Apparently, there's even a French philosopher did an analysis of shit, but nothing on the idea of debt. And debt is such a it's such a central part of the society in which we live, and he decided, I think I should have a go at this. So he asked himself the question of where did the idea of debt come from, and he starts to look at old Sanskrit texts, and finds that there are some ideas that come from that, and that there are obviously a lot of ideas that come from both the Jewish Bible and eventually the Christian Bible, which start to talk about debt. I mean, one of the it's the Lord's Prayer says, we should, in the original form, it says, forgive us our debts as we forgive those who are in debt against us. So there seems to be a big moral reason for it, and where did this idea come from? And then he looks at modern at what we would call primitive societies, and he says that a lot of the ideas which were coming from the Enlightenment and the 19th century philosophers, a lot of their ideas of debt are just simply wrong. He says if you look at primitive societies, you know, like it's not like you have an exchange system or barter system where you exchange a cow for 20 or 30 chickens or whatever. It doesn't really work like that. So he was having a look at all that, and he came up with the realization that, in fact, what we call money is actually just like what it really is, despite what we're told it is. What it really is, it's just a scrap of paper with I owe you whatever the so-called value of the piece of paper that it's written on. And so then he goes on to ask how did capitalism fetishize this concept, and how did they turn it into a thing that you had to submit yourself to, rather than something that could be. It was originally like a promise, you know. It's like I promise to I don't know. I promise to give you the value of the cow that I borrowed from you, but what exactly is the value of the cow in the first place, and how does that translate? You know, it's like, do you it's a very open-ended thing, and it really means just you owe me one, and what that one is could be anything. But capitalism comes along, and capitalism makes it very fetishized, and it also brings in usury and interest, and I'm very simplifying all this, but so people never get away from this burden of debt that's hanging over it. And he proposed several solutions, but one of the most important ones was to do with he advocated for was for debt amnesty. So he felt that was very important, especially in the world today, where, you know, countries and individuals never get out of debt. You know, like a student has to take on a big loan to study, and then that accumulates debt, and then they get some. Especially nowadays, are getting more and more menial, more and more poorly paid jobs at the end of it. So, and they never get to buy a house or to advance themselves or anything like this. So it's like what are they? What is the purpose of all this? And then you've got, as well as that, you've got people gambling on the debts that everybody owes. So you know, if you've got a mortgage or something like this, and somebody's gambling, somebody in Wall Street is, or City of London or wherever is gambling on it. So his proposed solution was a general amnesty for debt, and to find solutions that we can go forward from that point of the amnesty of debt, but not to slip back into the same routines. So we've got to find new ways of looking at what debt actually means, and not turn it into a fetish, and not turn it into some great monolith that's standing over you and it can never change. Because if you looked at history, the first 5,000 years, that's why I call it first 5,000 years, because he says, like, for nearly all of that 5,000 years, the concept of debt was as soon as, say, a new king took over back in even ancient Sumeria and the Middle Ages and so on, one of the first things they would do was to wipe the slate clean of any debt, because it wasn't working in their subjects' interest, and it wasn't working in their interest, because it meant more peasant revolts and things like that there. So that's a brief summary of debt the first 5,000 years. Now I'll go on to bullshit jobs. Now, bullshit jobs is a theory he came up with a bit by accident. He sort of played a joke. There was an anarchist feminist magazine, I think he was writing for, online, and asked him to write a piece for it, and he said, on what? And they said, well, whatever you want to lead it on. And he went, okay, well, I've got this idea which has been floating around with, and it's and so I'll give it a whirl. And he didn't really think very much of it. He didn't think it was going to go anywhere at all. But he just thought it'd be a good laugh to get it out. It'd be a bit of a joke. So he came up with this idea of bullshit jobs, and this was in 2013, and he put it out, and within weeks, apparently, it had been translated into at least 10 languages, and people there was a massive amount of hits on the page, massive amount, like way beyond what that website would normally get. And they were all going to this one page on the bullshit jobs, and as I say, it'd been translated and republished in different language websites all over the world. And he thought, well, this is really strange. So I'll follow this up. And he wrote. He opened an account, should I say? He opened an account online with a bullshit jobs email that people could write to and tell him all about their bullshit jobs. Being anthropologist, he was really interested in what they were all going to say, and sure enough, as soon as he opened it up, his inbox was flooded with people with their own private testimonials and private confessions that they felt that their job was utter bullshit. And these weren't just ordinary people either. These were, by and large, people in white collar professions, people in middle upper management and public relations and and corporate lawyers and people like this here. So so he was fascinated by them all, and he got a whole lot of material from these personal testimonies, and then there were statistical surveys made, one by YouGov in the UK, in relation to the theory that he was starting to present, and they worked out that something like 37% of respondents in the UK said that their job felt utterly meaningless and worthless. There was a smaller proportion of those actually actually didn't like their job. Some people sort of liked their job, but they didn't. But they still thought it was utterly superfluous. And if it was removed tomorrow, the world wouldn't be any worse without it. And so from all this material, he came up with 5 categories of the bullshit job. And the 5 categories he created, they're quite funny ones. You've got flunkies, which is now flunky in David Graeber's terms is a it's like what we often get with people in upper management positions are often surrounded by a series of people who just open their emails or sit in a reception desk that nobody ever goes to, things like this here. But it's all part of feeding the senior manager's ego. So it's like a whole lot of people who are basically doing nothing except sort of like feudal retainers in a sense. They are increasing the status and the status of the senior manager. So that's basically what a flunky is. A flunky is somebody who's sort of assisting or seems to be assisting a corporate executive or whatever, but in fact is doing very little, if anything at all, except to boost that person's social standing. Then number 2 is a goon. Now, a goon is how David Graeber describes it. It's a post which you don't have if nobody else has them. So it's like he says a typical goon is like corporate lawyer, somebody like this. You know, if nobody's got corporate lawyers, you don't need corporate lawyers. Similarly, armies. You know, if nobody's got an army, then you don't need armies, do you? And so he's that is basically a goon. So a goon is a sort of enforcer, or a goon is an enforcer, but is really, as I say, pretty much superfluous to the general functioning of society. And then you have number 3 is duct taper, and how he describes duct taper is like a duct taper is somebody who, if you've got a hole in the roof, instead of getting somebody to fix the roof, you pay a guy or a girl to come along with a bucket and put the bucket under the hole, and then that person's supposed to sit over the bucket and wait until the bucket's full and go and empty it, and to keep on doing that, and so that's what a duct taper is. And he gives another example. He gives an example of, like, he was, when he arrived in the university in London, he had his books on shelves in his office, and they fell off. The shelves fell off. The shelves fell off the wall, and he said he was trying to get hold of somebody to fix them, and he was sent through to this one guy, and this one guy kept on saying, yes, we'll get round to it, and then he'd have to phone again, and he'd have to phone again, and he'd have to phone again, and it went on and on and on like this, and eventually he cornered the guy, and he said, what's happening about fixing these shelves? And he said, well, I'm not the carpenter. And he said, oh, I thought you were the carpenter. And he said, no, I'm the guy who is employed by the university to absorb your complaints, and David Graeber's response was, well, why can't you just get a carpenter? Why does this job exist? And then we got box tickers, and box tickers are people who are, like, doing surveys and things like this here for no purpose, like spreadsheets and all the rest of it for the office or whatever it is, whatever the institution is, but it's to no real purpose whatsoever. Then they might have a meeting about it, but about the findings of the survey, and then everybody will go away from the meeting and nothing will be done, and so on and so forth. So the box ticker is just somebody who's compiling utterly useless data that nobody will ever look at. And then finally, you have the number 5 is the taskmaster, and the taskmaster is somebody who comes up with new ideas for new bullshit jobs, basically. So a taskmaster is always, a taskmaster would be in a management position, a high management position, and they'd be thinking, well, how can I make more more bullshit jobs, and often this is combined with a like at the same time as they're doing that, they're strimming down the actual people who are doing something. So those people would be either being made unemployed, they'll be streamlined, if you want to use that sort of language, that the Orwellian language that they use, or you're being forced to work harder for less money, but the taskmaster comes up in order to replace all the people who are actually doing something, who are actually interacting with the public, who are actually engaged in a productive process. The taskmaster's job is to create new bullshit jobs to make it look as though that company is actually doing something, even though it may be doing pretty much nothing. Right. So in analysis and conclusion, it's a sort of the book is really talking about this, what the Stalinization of capitalism, like in, for instance, Stalin's Russia, they had or post-Stalin Russia, they had a full employment policy. So they had, but it was predominantly blue-collar jobs. So you could have. I remember one time I was in Zimbabwe and back in the Mugabe days, and it was a similar sort of thing. I went into a record shop and decided I wanted this tape or CD or whatever it was, and I went and I had to and I went straight to the counter to buy it, and then I was told, no, you have to go to that guy who's over in the corner there, and then he'll give you a ticket, and then you've got to go to the guy in the corner over there, and he'll stamp the ticket, and then you go back to the cashier. So to buy this, like in a small shop that didn't have very many people, customers in it, there was like four different processes you had to go through to buy this this CD, and it took a long time. And but that's a sort of blue collar version of bullshit jobs. This is what he's talking about in under late capitalism, which is what we're presumably living under, though it's not entirely clear, is a bullshit job, in particular in white collar professions. And it even seeps into into some professions that are actually doing proper jobs, like, for instance, doctors and nurses. Doctors and nurses are frontline people who are actually doing, especially now under COVID, are doing extremely important work, and yet they are expected to do about for every hour that they say that they put into actual engaging with people and actually helping them and curing them, they have to spend another hour filling in stupid forms that have been made for them by box stickers. So even in jobs which do have meaning and which do actually do something, the whole uh, the whole the whole idea is of bullshit jobs has crept even into that, and it's becoming a even bigger, ever bigger part of their real works. So with the possible end result in a dystopian scenario of doctors and nurses actually being forced to do this stuff all the time instead, and doing virtually nothing in the real world. So he what he also does is he contrasts real work. He says we have a contradiction in current day capitalism. We have a contrast between real work, which is and unnecessary work, or what he also calls shit jobs and bullshit jobs. Now, a shit job may actually be a very useful job, but it's a job which has been streamlined or over the amount of work the person is supposed to do, and the amount of pay that they are supposed to take home is so small that it's a shit job. You know, like if you're a carer in a care home, you know, that's a really important job, and but it's not. But you're supposed to be ununionized. You're supposed to work for subcontractors. You're supposed to get by on a very minimal wage for really hard graft work. And he compares that to the bullshit jobs, which we've already been talking about. And he says you've got a real contradiction here, and with the automation of that's creeping in all the time, automation and what's the other one? The automation and the artificial intelligence that's coming in. What it's doing is it's getting rid of the people who, instead of getting rid of the bullshit jobs, it's getting rid of the real jobs. And as I say, the people who are doing the real jobs are being paid less, being forced to work longer hours, and ever harder and harder work conditions. Now, what he goes on to do is he starts to break down the whole theory of the labor theory of value. He says the labor theory of value, which was really big in the 19th century and the 18th century, obviously from Adam Smith onwards. The labor theory of value, you know, and then Marx and so on and so forth. There was this general understanding that there was production and consumption. And he says this is really only looking at one small sector of the economy. He said what we should be focusing on, especially feminist arguments have come in and are saying, well, no, actually there's far more people engaged in reproduction than there is in production, because he uses another classic example. If you have a cup in your hand, said, well, you know, he said a classic Marxist would look at the cup and say, well, that so many labor hours went into making that that cup, and so on and so forth, and then we'll be able to extract a value for it for that. But he said no, because he just said what it doesn't take into account is the fact that you clean that cup out 10,000 times. So, and that is labor as well. So it's and that's a reproductive task. And in fact, he says a lot of working class jobs you could argue are reproductive anyway, or to do with care. He says if you're building a bridge, you know, it's because you're building a bridge because you want people to get from one side of the river to the other side. So it's a sort of it's a care thing. It's not the productive. It's not so much a productive task. So he feels that there's been an overemphasis on production and consumption as the means of measuring our society, whereas in fact what he thinks we should be focusing on is care and freedom. So as we've already said, that there's this overwhelming dominance of white-collar managerial and associated professional work in the bullshit job categories, and it seems to be ever increasing in size in relation to the rest of it. Because I mean, if you went into a tailorist factory back in the say 1920s or something, you know, you'd have probably about one manager for every, this is a completely arbitrary number, but say about for every 100 workers. Now he says you're more, you've almost reached the absurd opposite of that, where you've got about 100 managers and one worker. So he's saying, well, this goes against the whole concept of capitalism, in fact, because I mean the whole concept of capitalism, of course, is to make yourself lean and efficient and all the rest of it. But in reality, modern capitalism is not doing that at all. It's creating more and more of these superfluous bullshit jobs and less of the real productive or care jobs that actually society needs to keep on going. And he says it's an enormous amount of human waste is involved. So therefore, what he argues is that it's been created, that it illustrates very clearly that modern capitalism is no longer, if it ever was, associated with rather than being associated with economic means of increasing wealth and so on and so forth, it's mainly serves an ideological purpose. And he says that you could almost say it's theological purpose, because it's almost like a religion. He says it's almost like we're going back to the Middle Ages, in that the modern day capitalism is more like a feudal state, where you've got the lords with their retainers, and then you've got the plebs and peasants who are in debt, and this is where we return to the debt theory, who are in debt to the Lord, and the Lord, in order to make himself look bigger, has a bigger and bigger retainer. You know, this is how medieval lords used to express their relative wealth, was through how many retainers they had. If you could 100 knights and 30 seneschals and musicians and jesters and what have you, then you were obviously somebody of great importance. And he says we're all almost at that level. So I'll wrap up now, but what he says as a solution is we should be looking at two different solutions. So he mainly concentrates on one, but I'm going to throw in the second one as well. He talks about his idea that we should all be floating around at the moment is a universal basic income, because he says, what is the point of having people in jobs which they don't really feel are doing anything? And in addition, not only are they not doing anything, but a lot of people are very unhappy in them. So why would you do this? Why would you force people to, in order to justify themselves by the ideological system, and so that they don't have to claim benefits and stuff like this here? Why not just put everybody on a universal basic income? Now, of course, there's universal basic income and there's universal basic income, but if you have a properly organized universal basic income, along with this is my addition, universal basic services, then you can allow people the opportunity to really develop themselves creatively, and to be able to come up with ideas, and to be able to do the things that they really want to do instead of what they're forced to do. So anyway, that's more or less the summary. And now I'll just open the floor for people to discuss in general, and it'd be interesting to see what people have to contribute, and what they think, and whether they think they have had experience of bullshit jobs, or maybe they're in one right now, or maybe they disagree with the entire theory. I don't know. So we'll just open it up for anybody to say whatever they want about the general subject. Okay, thank you. Hello? Hello?
Oh yeah, we are there. We moved on the next slide.
Okay. Yep, fair enough. So as I say, I've opened the floor to anybody who wants to talk.